You've reached Conversation with Mr. A. This is your host, Anthony Apostilla. Thank you for listening. Let's get right to the episode. You've reached Conversations with Mr. A. This is your host, Anthony Abastilla. So for this episode, I have Jewel Shepard from the Kitsap Black Student Union. Thank you, Jewel, for being part of this episode.
You're welcome.
Glad to hear. So this month, February, is Black History Month. Can you kind of give a little bit of introduction, a little bit of maybe the origins, maybe the history, background, exactly what Black History Month is all about?
Sure. So I don't want to get the dates mixed up, but I believe Black History Month was first started by Carter G. Woodson in 1926. And it was basically only at that time a week. It wasn't a whole month. But it was to highlight the accomplishments of Black Americans. As you know, there's a ton of inventors that never were able to get their patents on all of their inventions. A lot of the accomplishments were given to their slave owners. And so this is a long-standing history of why it's important to have Black History Month. In 1976, I believe, is when it changed to a full month. And the month of February was chosen. There's always kind of a joke or two about, well, it's the shortest, month of the year. But it was chosen more because of the ties to Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation. So interesting enough, when I was just in class with students this week, they did not know what the Emancipation Proclamation was. So it is good to kind of understand why we have Black History Month, because there still is some thought process that we've come so far, there's not a need for it anymore, but there is, because Black history is American history. And until it is actually included as part of the American history experience, we will celebrate the annual anniversary of Black History Month.
Awesome. Can you give me the origins and background a little bit of the Kitsap Black Student Union?
Sure. So we are a new organization. We were founded in 2022. So we're just over a year old. I am the founder and executive director for KBSU. We'll say that short because it's a long title. It came about because I recognize the need for representation in our schools. So when I was growing up, I was born and raised here, and I'm very aware of what these students are going through when they're really a simple majority or simple minority in their classrooms. At the time when I was going through school, it was my family and maybe 3 other families of color. I mainly grew up in the Port Orchard area and then ended up moving out to Bremerton area later. And so 8th grade, I started a multicultural group. That was very popular. It went over well. I felt like my peers really appreciated having somewhere to go where they belong. And then got to high school, and I was president of the Black Student Union for Bremerton High School for 2 years. And so after I left, I think within 2 or 3 years or so, the BSU was not running as efficiently. And that just really had to do with the availability of anyone to run the club. Now, I'm not sure when Miss Molina retired, because that was the point. When Miss Molina retired, it was like there was nobody to run the BSU. So students were having a similar experience all over Kitsap County, where they were asking to form Black student unions, and they did not have advisors that felt adequate to even advise the club, which is disheartening, because at the end of the day, students are really asking for a place to gather and feel like they belong. Not necessarily that an advisor had to teach this extra curriculum about history and all of that, but they want a place to belong. And so I would think that most educators would feel comfortable to just say, hey, let me just hold this space and then we can work on it. But that's not what happened. So that is how Kitsap Black Student Union started. We did a pilot for about 4 to 6 months just to see what the need was in the community. And then from there, and that was actually, there's history there too that sometimes gets a little misconstrued. Our pilot started with a campaign with a group called Students Direct Equity, which is an extension of Erase Coalition. At the time, one of the leaders that we worked with was interested in starting Kitsap Black Student Union with me. And I want to be on record to say this. Yes, the group started together. As time went on, very shortly after we started, it was very obvious that we had two different ideas of what Kitsap Black Student Union was going to be. I really wanted something where students felt more supported. We are going into the classroom. The other person had been in the classrooms, had been advocating and fighting for our students for many years. And to which I say thank you, because that she was absolutely a person that fought for me too. But at the end of the day, the tides are changing and batons have to be passed. And that's simply what happened. Two different directions. We filed the charter, filed our paperwork for our official organization. And the blood, sweat, and tears is what really made the difference. And I did that with our staff. Like, our crew has been in the trenches. I have not received pay for a whole year. This has been a labor of love, and it's taken off quickly. I have a lot of business experience, and I think that that has attributed to, the success of the business, because people forget nonprofits are businesses too.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm wondering with the students, how do you get the students engaged? So how do you get the students to come together and come as one?
So very simply, our biggest method of advertisement is social media. Whenever we have events, we do flyers. We've been a little bit more strategic in planning certain events, because we always need a head count for food and that type of thing. But like next week, we have our Black History program. And that's something that we have paid a lot of money to have someone come in, do an exhibit, and anything else associated with it. It's too much money to say, oh, let's just see who shows up, right? So we have our core group of students that are always engaged, and we call them and say, hey, bring your friends, or don't forget to reach out to so-and-so. And then we just recently finally got a notification software where we can send one message and it goes out to everybody. But the engaging piece is just, I think, the program is a student-led program, so they are hands-on with everything. Whether I started and do, I tell them all the time, well, this is your program, so I can do this and I can show you how to do it, because ultimately that is the goal, is that we're teaching them these life skills and they're getting hands-on training at the same time. But the piece that people forget happens when you do that and you let students lead the way is they also gain a level of confidence that they can't gain anywhere else, because they are the ones that are in the position. They're meeting legislators, they're talking to senators, they're talking to the school board. So that's how we do it. We just make sure that we focus on youth-led.
That's awesome. I'm wondering for yourself, do you have any African American role models or people that you've looked up to over the years that have really influenced of what you're doing, of who you are? Anyone that's really reached out to you, touched you?
Oh, yes. So I'd have to say, I grew up very blessed to have a lot of good people in my life. So My mom was like number one. Like me and my mom were very, very, very close. My best friend. People will say that sometimes, and it's like they're just saying it. But I really, when she left Earth, I lost my best friend. But she was really a person who showed me how to be um, more of a nurturer, because I don't think I just do that part. I grew up with all boys.
Oh, wow.
And so that part did not come very easy. And then I'm used to having to fight for stuff. And, in the nonprofit world, it is mainly men that are at the top in the executive roles. And so I have to always fight for a seat at the table. But my mom showed me how to be able to do that, but also do it with grace and compassion, and still be true to who I am. Also, my late Pastor Robertson, he was a mentor for speaking for me. I think, gosh, from the age of 10-ish is when I first started kind of training on how to do public speaking. My first public I would say public, because at church, I didn't feel like it was public. Like, I know those people. Even though it was a big congregation, it was like one of two really prominent Black churches in the area. But I remember like my first speaking engagement was on a ship. And he first said that I was coming to accompany him while he spoke for their Black History Month program. And then he's like, "Oh, you're going to do that speech that I told you that I like. Have you been practicing?" And I was terrified because I was just like, why didn't he tell me in advance? He did give me an idea that I needed to be, dressed nice and all those things, but I had no idea that I would be speaking. But it was a learning experience, and he really prepped me for public speaking. I kind of have lost that knack a little bit over the last 15 years or so I'm coming back into that. Um, Let me see who else. So mentor wise, I do have a couple mentors. Um, Delbert Richardson is one of them, just a humble person that started out just like I did and really understands both the dynamics of nonprofit, community work, Black community work, and the passion for kids. Because you can have passion but not be able to navigate nonprofit structures, and then whatever ideas you have go down the drain, because those two, you need both. You need several components to be able to make things work. But yeah, those would be the ones. I would say my dad is he's a good influence. And we've had our struggles over the years, but he is a person that has always affirmed who I am. Always understood why I am the way I am, and he's never chastised me for wanting to be myself. And I think that's important when you have kids. Their first idea of who they are is from home. So, yeah.
Interesting what you said just a little bit ago about how you could have the passion with something, but if you don't really know how to navigate things, it's just not going to work. I'm wondering for yourself. I'm assuming, is it important to have a team, people to kind of help through that? Because, I mean, I don't think everyone could, maybe some person may have a passion, but not quite have all the tools. Would you agree with that?
I do agree. It is important to build up a team. And we have a team. We have literally, I always call them the small but mighty team, because we do a lot of big work with just a couple of us. Not a couple, but a small team. It is important for people to understand, and it's all based off of what your goals are. If you have not sat down and actually written out what your goals are, you're doing yourself a disservice. If you write out your goals and you see that, hey, for instance, we want at least 50 members in the first year. 50 members in the first year is quite a few kids. The ratio is usually one advisor for 10 kids. So right there, you already need 5. And so it's important to remember that if you plan well, things can go well.
Mm-hmm.
What is the saying? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think I'm good at being a planner, and
Awesome.
that has really helped us a lot.
Awesome. I'm going to throw kind of a left field question on this. I kind of want to see what your thoughts are with interracial marriages. So I have some friends. One friend, African American, married to a Caucasian. I have an African American friend married to a Samoan. I'm a Filipino, and I'm married to a Puerto Rican. I was just kind of wanting to know what your thoughts are when it comes to just interracial marriages, because at least from my experience, it's like, okay, I can bring one view from the Filipino view. My wife can bring from the Puerto Rican view. I just kind of want to see what you thought about that.
I agree with what you're saying. I think that all of us are a blended race anyway. I think it works well when both parties are willing to go there, right? I have met interracial couples who have said very early on, "Oh, we don't do racism in this house." And I'm like, "So you guys are never going to leave your house?" Racism exists whether you acknowledge it or not. And the disservice you do to your children when you don't talk about things is they enter into the world and they're blindsided. And sometimes that trauma is very difficult for them to get past. So, in interracial marriages, it's important to bring out your culture, talk about your upbringing, and the intersection of where your cultures intersect. Because there's a lot of history that we don't learn in school, and it's there. Like, I I just don't understand. Like, there's a couple that I knew that used to say you couldn't even say, black or white. You had to say vanilla or chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's not going to work when your kids become, fifth graders or whatever. Um, so I just think it's important. I think interracial marriage is, I mean, I hope you're not asking me, do I think it's fine? Of course, I think it's fine.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I just think that we have a duty to always educate and make sure that whatever decision we've made, we take it all the way. You can't ignore it.
Of course.
It's going to happen one way or another. So,
And let's hit the elephant in the room on this one. Let's talk about the racism. One question I'm wondering is with racism is how prevalent do you feel it is now compared to, gosh, let's say 25, 30, 40 years ago? Do you see it more prevalent? Do you see it being addressed better? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
well, we just did a play in last month called The Color Museum, and that play had it was 9 sketches of the 11 that we did, and they talked about various degrees of racism, oppression, basically the African American experience in different lenses, right? It went over very well. There was a lot of really direct, in your face, uncomfortable conversations. However, this play made it a little safer to touch the topic because we did it in satire and fun. There was humor behind it, but there was also the seriousness of people's struggles that they've went through. I think it was a moment for people to kind of sit back and say, wow, this is Black History Month, or, well, MLK. This is MLK Day. We're always talking about the dream, but we're not actually talking about the struggle of what people actually went through back then and in comparison to today. So, yes, it is relevant. It is prevalent still. It's a relevant topic still. Our students in the last year have been, when we started the pilot, we were talking about different incidents that had occurred at schools. From there, and I'll say some of them because it's important to not gloss over that these are real things happening to real people. So one was a attack on a volleyball team. The Bremerton girls volleyball team had been attacked by some people in North Mason. I believe it was North Mason. And that was a big thing. That was in the newspaper. It was horrible. That happened in 2022. That was October 2022. And then there was a couple brawls, full on fights that occurred from racial slurs at basketball games. At the time that the investigation was going on, we were told that the general culture of certain schools is to do monkey calls and racial slurs during games, and that the students did not feel safe, yet we're still taking them to play a sport. And that's just disgusting to me. Move forward. They said they worked on it. They came to a conclusion. There was an apology. They put in some new ground rules, and now we're back to the new school year. And now football has an issue. And that one was also in the newspaper. There were multiple incidents that occurred, but one of the big ones was against Bainbridge, where there was a racial slur. One of the students was actually being pinned down, tackled, and called a racial slur at the same time. Wow. So when we sit down and we talk to our students and they're saying, hey, it was Black History Month and they're throwing cotton on the school bus, or they're passing around this paper that says they get a pass to say the N-word. These are real things that are happening in classrooms and all across Kitsap County. And for some reason, it doesn't get addressed. It kind of just gets brushed under the rug. And I'm like, I have wrote papers on the effects of racism to adolescents. We are talking about a rise in suicide amongst Black kids in particular, up to 14% rise. And this is not like, okay, they're high school. No, this is from age 9, I believe. 9 through 14 is where the increase is the most. You're talking about young people who are dealing with kind of adult things. They can't process them all the way yet. And so, yes, we are still in 1960s.
And I think what's scary is, to add to that, is with social media. I mean, now unfortunately, we've had Snapchat, the Instagram, just TikTok, just a whole bunch of social media, which I kind of feel like it's kind of scary that, now students, I wouldn't even and what's bad is not just Kitsap County, everywhere. Across the nation, even other countries, wherever. It's like, okay, people are having access to the attack on social media.
Yeah. When it comes to social media, I was surprised to see that schools are having a real difficult issue with spam accounts, where these social media owners are like, not our problem. And I'm like, you can't just disable the page. No, because it infringes on this person's right, whoever started the page, who's anonymous. It's a whole thing.
Especially when they put school logos, and when they say, oh, this is from so and so school.
One. Yeah, I just saw one.
I've seen those. It's a problem. Okay, so I know time's getting a little short here. I'm gonna kind of lighten it up just a little bit.
Okay.
I'm gonna do a thing called word association. So I'm gonna share a word or two, and just tell me like the first thing that comes to mind. Now this one's a little lighthearted. The longtime listeners will know about my total disdain for pickles. I just do not like I hate them, and so I'm gonna start with that for starters. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word pickles?
Bread and butter.
Okay. All right.
I love pickles. Okay. Bread and butter pickles are my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sports cars.
Ooh, sports cars. Oh, it's not technically a sports car. It was a Bentley Milliner. I'm not good at the sports cars, but it's a sports car to me. It was a Bentley, but it's reconfigured to look like a sports car. So.
Okay. Barbie.
Oh, that movie that just came out was so cool. And I actually went and bought a Barbie shirt with the ponytail. And then for Black History Month, I saw these super cool ones with the black Barbie with the ponytail.
Okay. Usher,
Super Bowl, of course, just happened.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson.
Oh, the classic. Of course, because I had mindless energy and someone was comparing Usher's Super Bowl performance to Michael Jackson, but yeah, Jackson is a classic.
King of pop.
Yes.
The king of pop. Rap music.
Rap music. You know, it's funny because I'm always questioning if something is actually hip hop or if it's actually rap. And there is all kinds of arguments, or we won't say arguments, we'll say debates, healthy debates about when did rap switch over to pop music. And I'm like, well, it did to make it more agreeable and likable. But rap was a form of social justice. Mm-hmm. It was a way for people to actually talk about the things that were happening to them. And so that's what comes to mind. Ice Cube, NWA. Those are the first things that come to mind.
Okay. Bad hygiene.
Oh, so we have to have bad hygiene talks sometimes. And that's okay because, you know, the kids are growing up and sometimes they either haven't been told or they don't have the resources. So either way, we address it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Horror movies.
I don't like horror movies. I'm a big scaredy cat.
That's okay, too.
I don't like horror movies.
Romantic movies.
My favorite, yeah. One of my favorites is Bridesmaids.
Okay.
With J-Lo, yeah.
All right. Mm-hmm. How about pickup trucks?
My dad is a Dodge person, and he always loved trucks. In fact, I used to have a truck. I used to have a 1956 Dodge. I had that truck for a while, and then my dad bought it back for me. But yeah, he's a Dodge truck guy. I introduced him to one of our legislators, Greg Nance, before he became a legislator, and they were helping do the planning for the multicultural fair. And I literally was like, "Hey, can you guys run to the store and get posters?" And then they had a whole conversation about trucks and Dodges, and oh my gosh, they're like best friends over trucks.
Nice. UFC or WWE?
I'm gonna say neither because I'm a boxing person, right? So yeah, like Mayweather was like one of my favorites, and then Jermaine Taylor. With UFC, it just gets so gory. Mm-hmm. But I will say this. Shout out to my cousin who is actually breaking out into the world of, he's been doing boxing, but I think he's going to start doing UFC. He's with, he just got accepted to, I think they're called the Dallas Enforcers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, he is something else. You got to see his videos. If you're into UFC, you got to see his videos. He's pretty tight.
I'll throw one more just for fun. How about The Rock?
The Rock.
Dwayne Johnson.
I know who that is, but you know, when you say The Rock, guess who it reminds me of? Kevin Hart.
Oh, jeez.
That's terrible. But it's because they always go back and forth, and I am a Kevin Hart fan too. So
I can't follow that.
But I'm curious to see if The Rock is actually going to run for office.
He's actually back in WWE, believe it or not.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
He's back.
I didn't know that. Well, then, gosh, I better tune in then. Yeah, I grew up in, I said I had all brothers and there's all boys. I'm the only girl. So I watch wrestling all the time. That was my favorite. I used to know everybody. Hulk Hogan, although Hulk Hogan is not my favorite anymore. He got some integrity stuff that needs to be worked out. Not integrity. I just think he's an old school. They do, but like it was Hulk Hogan. Like he was like everybody's favorite wrestler, and then it turns out he has a lot of ideas about race in general. Yeah.
So okay, any final things you would like to tell our listeners out there?
I would just say that, one, thank you for having me on. This has been fun. Two, to tune in, we have our webpage, which is kitsapblackstudentunion.org. Most everything is on there in terms of upcoming events. And then we also have Instagram, which is at KitsapBSU. Facebook is Kitsap Black Student Union. And just stay tuned. We have so much more that's happening. We're always looking for volunteers for any of our events. So you can actually sign up under the membership and just say you want to be a volunteer. And there's a background check and all that stuff. But we are happy to be in community. And I think the kids are really, I see the change from those students that started 2 years ago. Oh my gosh. And some of them are only in ninth and 10th grade. I can't wait to see what's going to happen when they become a senior, Super excited. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that concludes this episode of Conversations with Mr. A. The word I was thinking about with this episode as I was interviewing Jewel is passion. Very passionate about helping out the students, the community, the Black student community. Just very passionate and caring, and just really addressing issues that tend to get ignored. And so, Jewel, thank you so much for doing this interview. It was much appreciated, and hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Stay tuned for more future episodes coming through. Thanks for listening.